Now, there's been some speculation around the past couple of weeks regarding 76ers center Joel Embiid, as he's been dealing with just a lot of injuries really throughout his life. And, more so over the past few years, we saw him go down against the Warriors last year, had the meniscus surgery. Then he played in the Olympics, looked pretty much fine. And then this season, it's just been banged up after banged up, just has not looked at the top of his game. And, a lot of the sports analysts and media pundits were pressuring Embiid to shut down for the season because the Sixers, for lack of better terms, are garbage. I mean, they're 12th or 11th in the East right now. Yeah. It's not looking good. And on February 28th, we saw a statement pop up on the Sixers Twitter account, which we're going to put on the screen right now. And it says the following: the Philadelphia 76ers and Joel Embiid have been consulting with top specialists regarding ongoing issues with his left knee. After further evaluation, it has been determined that he is medically unable to play and will miss the remainder of the season to focus on treatment and rehabilitation. We are working with medical experts to determine the exact treatment plan and will update media when we have more information. The team and specialists will continue working with Joel to ensure the best path forward for his long-term health and performance. So Joel Embiid, in short, is done for the year. He's going to need to seek a lot of opinions on what to do because we've seen so many different, reports of what could happen. Some reports say he might retire. Some say he has to undergo a ridiculously invasive knee surgery that has to break bones to align the tendons better. There's basically a lot that goes into it. So I want to know y'all's thoughts on this whole situation, if you have any more information to bring up.
Well, listen, my MVP. Oh,
that's your MVP?
I'm so upset. But listen, this is like, I'm getting a little PTSD with this Embiid. This is sort of like what we've been experiencing with Kawhi for the past 5 years. And now we're finally seeing him on the court, and there's been no issue. But I think the whole Kawhi thing was different with the medical staff. I think the Philly medical staff doesn't really have an input on, I guess, is not forcing these injuries upon him like we heard from the Clippers with that whole lawsuit. I think this is solely Embiid's just physical health. And yes, he played games. He was good. He was not good. But when you're taking off a lot of games like he has for the past, I guess, 2 or 3 years, you're not healthy. If you're like LeBron playing every game, that's when you know you're healthy. And like, I know the Sixers are bad, and it would have been nice to see him still play, but it's not worth it. I guess even the same thing for Paul George. Even they don't need to win. Maxey, of course, still love to see him play. McCain's out. They traded Caleb Martin, which was a big signing. They kind of gave up a little bit. Now I guess they're fully kind of throwing in the towel without throwing out the towel because Embiid was not shut down. He's the big injury problem.
Right.
But in all seriousness, we're probably seeing the beginning of the end for what could have been one of the greatest centers of all time in our
Still
era.
is.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's the beginning of the end.
There's definitely a humongous what if around Joel Embiid's head because, he won an MVP. He's won scoring titles. He's one of the most dominant players that we've seen in the league when he's healthy. Mm-hmm. And it's just, every year it's an injury. 1 year it's his knee. Mm-hmm. I think he's broken his orbital bone like 2 or 3 times early on in his career. We weren't even sure if he was going to have an NBA career when he was drafted because he was 300 pounds. He had big foot issues. Mm-hmm. And, it's tough. And he needed to cut the weight, and he did this offseason. But, he keeps coming back too quickly from these injuries. And I kind of do want to hold the Philly medical staff a little bit accountable here because this isn't the first time we're seeing any of this. They didn't really handle James Harden stuff well. They clearly did not handle the Ben Simmons back stuff well. So
same thing with Markelle Fultz.
Exactly, yeah. So
interesting.
Definitely intriguing regarding that. What are your thoughts on this whole thing, Gio? I know you're a big Embiid guy.
I'm not that big of an Embiid guy. But I think he should definitely go for the surgery. Going back to your question.
Yeah.
He should absolutely go for the surgery because this is his livelihood. This is his career. It's his body. He has to try. At least try. You can't just quit. You know what I mean? You have to go out swinging. So
he's definitely not retiring.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you have to go for the surgery if you're Embiid. see what happens. Maybe this is like a new revolutionary surgery. I heard you say that this is like a very rare surgery, a very invasive surgery.
Yeah.
So this doesn't happen often, but hopefully it gets the job done because I don't want Embiid to be a what if story.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I think, how old is he?
31.
He's like he should have plenty of years left.
Right.
You know
like,
what I mean?
He's in his peak. Like, he
Yeah.
realistically, like, should be competing for championships.
Exactly. So I don't want Embiid to be another what if story like Derrick Rose. You know what I mean?
Right.
I want him to try, keep going, get this surgery, see what happens. Let's go.
As far as Embiid goes, the story, I mean, he was successful, right? We all know this. I mean, he started playing basketball at 16 years old when he left Cameroon and became multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA. You know, we could debate the validity of his MVP at a later date, but
He was playing soccer before that, right?
I think so.
Could you imagine you went
Yes.
to like
Yes.
the like what's the soccer league? Premier League or something?
Yeah, he could have gone to La Liga.
Imagine.
He
And
went
he's
there.
7'1", just
And-
like
Yeah, bro,
cooking.
it's crazy, wild. But yeah, it's definitely a shame, and you know, we hope he has a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the one last thing we'll talk about regarding this situation is this is a very important next few months for the Sixers.
Yeah.
They need to lose as many games as humanly possible because
Oh, they can do that.
well, they can, but however, they need to get the security of at least getting inside the top 5 because their draft pick is they traded their draft pick to the Thunder, and that pick is top 6 protected, which means if that pick is 7 or later, it goes to OKC. So you're looking at a situation where OKC could win the championship and have the 7th
Wow.
pick.
Okay, so they need to get into top 5. This is like you said.
Well, at least
lost
I'm saying like
6.
top 5 because like let's say you have the 3rd worst record in the league, and 3 teams jump into the lottery, you have the 7th pick.
Exactly.
So
Yikes.
that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous game they're playing.
Yeah. That I was listening to the whole thing. I mean, it would be great if they win the lottery. I mean, the best thing for them to happen this year is, you know, they know McCain's going to be back next year, and he looked phenomenal with him and Maxey in the backcourt. We're hoping Paul George could be better next year. Who knows?
I don't know, man.
No
But
idea with
if
that guy.
if they win the lottery, I think that will lift all their spirits up going into next season, or even getting a top 3 pick.
I mean, we'll have to see because
You know.
this team's won a lottery, and this team's had a first pick traded to them, and they fucked up both of them.
Markel and who was it?
Ben
Man,
Simmons.
both of them.
So right now, I'm looking at Tankathon. The Sixers currently have the 7th worst record in the NBA.
Yeah.
Right now.
And it's close right now. There's only, I think, a half game separating us and Brooklyn and Philly.
Yeah.
We're just ahead.
Exactly.
And, you know, Toronto's going to get Brandon Ingram back at some point. So Brooklyn and Philly making a late charge towards the top 5, which is exactly
Yeah.
what we need to see. But it's just a really unlucky, unfortunate year. My final question, what happens with Daryl Morey in the offseason?
Oh, this is a good thing. So I was going to bring up Nick Nurse and his job security, but I think he's safe for at least another season or 2.
Yeah, they just hired.
Just because you can't blame him for the injuries, and you know, give him some time. Daryl Morey, oof, I'm not very fond of him. I think going
Not many are.
in a different direction, it would be awesome for Philly, because they're kind of in a retool, rebuild, I guess, type of situation, depending on how their players come back from injury. I would definitely look elsewhere. I think I don't know who it is, but if you take a Pistons route and you find a gem in the fold from a really bad team like Trajan Langdon was in New Orleans, and bring them to your side and completely make that team into the top 6 within a year, that's a win. But you're not going to find, unless you do find that gem, it's going to be tough.
Right.
But I guess bring in a young mind. I know Daryl Morey's on the older side, but I think bringing in a young mind for the young guys on their team specifically would help relate, I think, a little more. Plus, with Nick Nurse being a young coach as well.
That's fair.
I think that's the best way to go.
Because, like, I don't even think it's more so of that. I just think the way Morey handled the past few off seasons has not been great.
Yeah, I think
mainly the Paul George contract.
Yeah.
The fact that you signed him for 4 years, 200 and I think it was 212,
So bad.
Yep.
and he's been arguably one of the most disappointing players this entire season. Not particularly good.
Yeah.
Obviously, you also gave Embiid a 3-year, $193 million contract extension, and he basically has not been playable since. Is another thing. You're going to be paying that man $70 million in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think the way he's handled all this, including the Harden stuff when he came in and came out, not particularly great.
Yeah, the best offseason we graded is now turned into probably unanimously the worst one because
Wow.
Paul George, Caleb Martin's off the team, and
Well, they got Quentin Grimes. That was a win.
Quentin Grimes is the win. Eric Gordon hasn't been seen. You know,
It's not good.
yeah, exactly.